Another draft physics video presentation. Yes. Comments. I don't know how many I'll get through, frankly, because one of them I'm going to spend some time on. But anyway, let's see what happens. So might as well just get to it. So, Pixelcraft 70 has produced a simulation, and, produced is kind of a funny word, right? Just like this video is produced, it can be produced really well, or it can be produced kind of casual. And obviously I've been kind of casual. But anyway, my simulation may never be able to accurately depict really what happens. Well, the whole point I'm making here is that it's so simple that you should be able to depict it because it's not very complicated. The real elements are really simple. There's just the distance to the screen, the frequency of the light, and the width of the slits, and that's all there is, in terms of relevant variables. That's it. The phase that goes with that, of course. Frequency, phase goes with frequency. I need to know how the photon is generated from the globe or LED or whatever. No, you really don't. You just have to know that they're generally in phase, that the energy, generally speaking, isn't completely random, that the photons are initiated at the same time because electricity moves into the circuit at the same time and affects many atoms at the same time, and that's causing the photons to all leave at the same time, so to speak, to have some timing relevance. It's not perfectly coherent lasers, but they send more light at certain initial points in time than at other initial points at time. So I'll explain. I assume the photon would never be created from the exact same position on the quantum level. Well, I don't know. That's possible. It could. A second later, another photon is initiated at the same point in the wire or something else. But obviously, as time passes, the wire is moving through space and blah, 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 blah. So lots of things are always changing, but relative to us, it could be the same position relative to our relative positions in space. So I guess we will switch to the drawing, and I will attempt again to give you I've been over this stuff so many times and tried to make it, 2 plus 2 plus 2 physics. There's two forces, there's two kinds of force, two kinds of matter, electrons and protons. Just forget about everything else. Doesn't make any difference. And two kinds of interactions. And that's all there is. There's no forces stuck to forces. There's no waves. Waves are just what something looks like. It has really nothing to do with what it's actually doing, except in the circumstance of, special mediums where, again, water, where the molecules are attached to each other electrically, statically, and in the case of atmosphere, where the molecules are stuck to each other because they're under pressure. They're pushed into each other constantly. They're closer to each other than they'd like to be. And that means there's pressure between them, so they have an attachment. But the only way force interacts is with matter. You only see force because it interacts with a piece of matter, and you only see matter because force interacts with it and causes it to move. And that's it. There's no, there's no other features here. There's nothing else. Like I say, I could say the universe is simpler, but we're already so simple in terms of so few moving parts that this really shouldn't be challenging. So let's use the analogy of soldiers or bullets. So I'll just switch between soldiers and bullets because either one I think works well enough. Maybe I should go a little further over there. Oh, God, it's just so, it really is a little bit of work. All right, so we have a little reflection, but that's hardly the end of the world. All right, so the source. Well, here's a piece of the simulation. I guess I should do that first. And again, I'm not being critical. Great that you did something, blah blah blah. But I mean, there's obvious flaws in this as a understanding of the concept. Your gun doesn't even cover the two slits. Now, obviously, the laser beam, the dot the laser beam makes always goes over the two slits. You can't do the experiment unless you shoot the light over the slits. So, in this simulation, he's just shooting him at the wall, and it's really pretty, and these float off. And so, I mean, obviously, I've pointed out the speed can never be changed. All you can do is force the thing moving to push matter, and then it'll slow down if it has to carry an electron or carry a proton, but it never slows down. Force never changes speed. So I just don't even understand how this is in any way relevant to the two slit when you're not even firing anything through the slits. You're just plowing them into the barrier. No experiment does that. So I'm just saying, I mean, it's sort of an egregious flaw, and it's obviously not simulating anything reasonable. I mean, again, I don't mean to be critical, but yeah, just not really close enough. I mean, I can't, I'm not supposed to lie and say, oh yeah, it's beautiful. No. But anyway, all right, so back to the source. The whole point here is that these are elements. The argument being made is that the photon is a composite object. It's not something that is one clump. It's not something that's one thing. It's made of little elements, okay? Bullets. I mean, I've used this analogy. It's just so simple. You have a gun in your hand. You shoot bullets, right? Bang, I shot a bullet. Bang, I shot a bullet. Bang, I shot a bullet. Those bullets, if in free space, you can understand, have a distance between them. I mean, they're in space. They're going the same speed because they were shot out of exactly the same gun with the same load. They have a distance between each other in space. Now, if I move the gun a little bit while I'm shooting, then I'm going to create polarization. And the bullets will be a little bit out of perfect alignment, but they're still going parallel to each other, and they're flying through space. Now, if I do that numerous times, if there's a number of people doing exactly the same thing, then you can understand there could be, more than one bullet in space. And in these different locations, and they could overlap each other, and they could be quite crowded. But the thing that initiated the pattern will exist in the field. Okay, so the point is that this is like a bunch of soldiers leaving, the war zone or something, and you're sending them. Okay, somebody's got a watch, and they got a bunch of soldiers lined up in the trench, and it says go, and then platoon number 1 leaves. Okay, and so platoon number 1 is 10 soldiers or whatever, and they all leave, and then the guy says go, and platoon 2 leaves, and so they're right behind a certain distance, and then platoon 3 leaves. Okay, so that's what's coming out. That's what's being sent to the world. Okay, it's all going this way, and it's going the speed of light. So that's your gun. That's your source. And it's the resolution is tiny. These things are a billion times smaller than the slits, or a trillion times smaller. So, the resolution thing is always going to be tricky. I can't draw the double slit, because it's got tiny dimensions in it of 1 millimeter here, and then it's got big dimensions of inches, over here, or feet over here. So, I mean, obviously I can't, it's not easy to draw that. All right, but anyway, leave this attempt. All right, so I'll take this little source out, and I'll just draw it in this way. So, there's soldiers coming, and they're coming at a fixed distance. And so that's what is going towards this thing here. So this will be the slit for now, not the target. Let's put it closer. So here's our slits. And we'll just use a single slit for this example. All right, so I have these soldiers. I've sent them. They're independent, okay? They're not water. They're not atmosphere. They're not any of this crap. They're not tied to each other. One of them doesn't drag the rest of them with it. There's no medium here. There's just little bits of energy. Little soldiers with guns. And so the rule is going to be kind of simple when it hits this thing. So the argument is this thing is going to screw up these soldiers a little bit. All right. I mean, now, as I pointed out, these soldiers have a polarization. Okay. They're out of alignment a little bit. But this is the important thing. This is their phase. Okay, is how they're in order. All right. You can't see all of that I drew, but there's some back here. All right, how they line up. This is their frequency. They have no frequency if they don't stay in phase. All right, but anyway, so that you don't need to know at this exact moment. All right, so obviously they're covering the whole slit when you shoot them. Even laser beams spread with distance. So you're covering the whole slit with your soldiers. You're hitting them everywhere. You're not just sending them in here in the middle. You're sending them everywhere here, so they're going every one of these locations where they will hit. Now, the argument, the simple blow up, if I take a blow up of this, which I will do, I'll magnify it. So they're heading in, and the idea is if they go through the middle, they got no trouble. They're going to end up here, and nothing's going to change. They'll stay in order, okay? The A's and the B's and the C soldiers will be in the right order. They'll hit, and they'll do what a photon does in terms of reflecting the same radiation back, and you will see brightness. Now, obviously, this is only 1 millimeter, so it's only 1 millimeter on the target. Okay, so when it gets to the target, it's only one little tiny spot that gets inundated with many photons, and that's what you see in the single slit. You see an insanely bright spot in the middle. That's all the soldiers that get straight through. The platoon A, platoon B, platoon C all made it, no problem. The interesting part is going to happen on these surfaces. So the argument is, and the mathematics demonstrates, that the surfaces are the whole game. So let me just draw one of the surfaces big. Now we know the surface is just made out of atoms, and atoms have electrons on them, and there's electrons on the surfaces. And so there's an atmosphere here, a complex atmosphere. So the ones that go near the surface are going to do something different than the ones that don't go near the surface, right? So these are done. The middle ones went through, no problem. 90% of the light just goes straight through the opening, lands at the other end. Now, a certain percentage will be affected by the surface. And how is it going to be affected? Well, it's going to be affected because platoon A is going to come in. He's going to hit an electron, let's say, and he's going to get scattered this way. So the man from platoon A is now going not straight, okay? He's going some other direction, okay? And he's going to end up, someplace else. And then the guy, platoon B, who was right behind him, they were sent at the right timing to make it work. Pause. It should be back. Alright, so platoon A guy is going here. So he got distracted, he got deflected, he banged into something. And then platoon B, let's just say he was, there's part of this little polarization, and they're really close to the slit, and he actually crashed right into this wall, and he died, so he's done. I mean, he's a vibration now in the surface. And then platoon C guy, he goes this way. All right, so things have gotten really, hits an electron, he goes that way. So we're just saying it's scatter. That's all it is. So all you have to do is, mathematically, is just create a rule that simply says if they get near the surface, there's a tendency, a probability that they either do this scatter thing or they do this don't go anywhere thing. So you have a bunch of A, B's, and C's on near these surfaces that are going to go in every one of these directions. And there is a probabilistic idea that the ones that are going a lot of bending, it's because they hit more than one electron. Or they did something really crazy and shot out like that, some sort of weird, bizarre angles of deflection. So there will be all kinds of little aberrations, but you can just say as a rule, the tendency will be is that you'll just have a scatter pattern, which is, only 10% of the light that goes through is getting affected by a surface, and then only 10% of that light, you could argue, hits more than one electron and gets scattered more and more. So this would be a a lower probability than here, and this would be a lower probability than here, you know. And so it's obviously there's a tendency that most of the ones that are scattered aren't going to scatter a lot, they're going to scatter less. So there's more coming off with a smaller angle of scatter and less with a very extreme amount of scatter. But frankly, it doesn't matter to make the pattern. So if you want to make all of those the same amount of odds, it's fine. You'll just see every bar instead of just a few of the bars, which might be better for the sake of illustration. So anyway, so all you're saying is that the surfaces are going to make a mess of the A, B, C order of these of the soldiers. So when they when they pass near the surface, the ABC is going to mean that A might be taking this extremely long path, B might be taking this very short path, and C might be taking this, you know, long path over here. And so you have different components that are going in different locations. And all you're really going to do is on this other surface is know that these distances matter. That the amount of time it takes you to get to where you're going is now changing your sequence. You're now going to perhaps be out of sequence. A could end up taking, let's say A takes this very long route, okay, and then a component of the C, you know, brigade or whatever, platoon C, is here, and he's going to take this shorter route. And those two can combine. Now C is first, and A is going to be second. So they've switched their order, but they still have the same phase. So even though this is going to be the C guy is going to be first, and now it's going to be the A guy, and then maybe a B guy here. And so you've changed their order, but they're in the same sequence. So no problem. Boy, that doesn't show very well. Well, you know, still got some technical things to work out here, I guess. And such. Yeah, like it's just too uneven. Well, can't fix everything, so I'm not going to fix it. Yeah. All right, so let's clean it up again. All right. So all you have to calculate is they start off in a sequence or a frequency, and then they go through the obstacle, the filter, you want to call it, fine. The filter makes some changes to their direction, and that'll make changes to how and what order they land. And all you're really saying in the landing area, right, the simple math is just going to be when there's a whole wavelength, when there's a whole amount of time difference, phase, period, whatever you want to call it, between them, and the wavelength is basically going to be decided by how many fit between these two distances, because those are the two sources. The way you're going to put them back together is to actually send a piece from here to fix what got broken here. So you might have an A and a C that land here, and you're missing the B, and the B will come from over here and fill this spot. And then you'll have an A, B, C. You'll have the right order again. And all you're really going to say is where are the points where if I was to come from here and I was to come from here, I have the same amount of distance. So I don't have anybody in between the phase. I don't have anybody a half phase. Half phase is no good. It has to be a whole wavelength, a whole period of jump. So you're just saying that you're going to end up jumping pieces, like a B brigade guy is now going to be in the A brigade, and an A guy, maybe he'd be all the way in the C brigade. You're just switching where they are, but you have to switch by whole increments of time for there to be reconstruction of the right order. So you're just looking for an A, B, C order in the sense of the time between them. So I shouldn't say A, B, C. Something went wrong there. So he's trying to. All right. All right. So let's see if I can illustrate this one final way or something. Yeah. So the only condition you have is the starting frequency, the distance between them, and that's So you just want to restore this. You're going to scatter the soldiers in different directions. They're all going to land on this surface somewhere, okay? And in the places where there's the same distance between them, no matter where they were in order, is where you're going to reconstruct a photon. So you'll have a photon will survive the experience when you recreate that phase. And that's essentially all the mathematics is doing. So that's it. So soldiers will hit all locations. All locations in the screen is going to get hit with the same amount of soldiers, except for that middle part in the single slit example. So in the single slit example, you know, the middle part, there's a whole bunch, because they don't get bothered. And then, you know, at all these other locations is where they got scattered to. And all you're saying, where do I reconstruct the pattern? The same number of soldiers is going to hit all of these places. There's only certain places where they're going to be back in phase, back in the right order. Not ABC order, but distance between them order. And those are the places where you'll make an effective soldier. So you could argue that the Nazis they're fighting have armor, and the armor requires you to stab them twice to kill them. So one soldier has to stab them, and then another soldier has to stab them 5 seconds later for you to kill the Nazi, and you know, or however you want to metaphor it. But clearly, the only photons that are going to get reflected back that you'll be able to see are ones that have a consistent frequency. If the frequency isn't consistent, you know, if it's out of, if this period isn't exactly the same, then it won't be a soldier. It won't be an effective soldier. It'll just be soldiers that don't kill any Nazis. They stab him, and then the other guy doesn't show up, so he's not stabbed again, so the Nazi doesn't die, and so they don't get a bright spot. They don't get a badge. You know, they don't, you know, nothing changes. So all you have is the frequency coming in. You have the distance between here and here, which is just telling you how many wavelengths fit in that difference. So how many of these frequencies fit in that distance, and that'll tell you how many vectors there are that are possible, okay, from this point and this point. It'll tell you how many of those vectors will have a wavelength difference, okay, from and at the spots, and it'll just tell you how many spots there are going to be on this wall by a simple mathematical relationship that just basically says you just multiply the frequency. Well, you don't have to multiply it, you can divide it, okay, into the distance. All right, that tells you how many frequencies fit in the distance, and then you just multiply that by 1/2 of a pi, which is going to be this line, this circumference line, and that'll tell you how big the spots will be, the wavelengths will be on the spot. So you're just seeing the wavelength of the light represented as a bright spot, as a percentage on here. So you're just taking this distance between a wavelength, and you're just projecting it now on a bigger line that's whatever this distance is from the surface. So you got to do this times L, or whatever that distance is. So that radius, the distance from the target, that R, okay, times 1/2 pi will tell you, you know, times the wavelength will tell you how big wavelength is on this arced line. That's all it is. It's just an arced line. You're just saying how big is a wavelength proportionally to this arced line at that distance. That's what the results are going to be. Now, to simulate it, again, I'm just saying all you do is send the scatter from these 2 points, and the geometry just adds up. Where the geometry can create a guy from here travels the same amount of time that it takes to travel between platoon A and platoon B. It takes a certain amount of time to travel that distance. Anytime this line is that distance, there's a notch on it, so to speak, and when the notches on this line up with the notches on that, you have the capacity to remake a photon. So what else is there to say? So there's not much to it. I'm just saying it's pretty easy to simulate this because you're just really saying you're just sending a bunch of soldiers here, and where did you remake the frequency? And where you remake the frequency, you have light. Where you didn't remake the frequency, the right frequency, you have no light. So when they're in phase, there's light. So there's nothing interacting here. No soldier bangs into another soldier. No soldier drags into another. So there's no destructive anything. Destruction never happens. Photons are merely misaligned. The little bits of energy are just in places where they can't be seen as a photon anymore. They're still alive. None of the soldiers die except for the ones you could say that hit the barrier. But none of them are killed. There's no destructive interference. There's just chaos. There's just disorder and reorder. So there's places where the order is retained, where you get it back again, and there's places where it doesn't. And that looks a little bit messy. Yeah, well, too bad. That's what happens with drawings, I suppose. Alright, so that's probably enough of that. So you should be able to simulate it, because there's not much to it. Just isn't. Alright, so do I want to go any further with that? I guess not. I don't think there's any more here. Let's see. I assume the photon would never be created from the exact same position on the quantum level. Well, again, you don't have to even assume any of that. The source is creating, generally speaking, many photons with the same phase. So, it just doesn't matter whether you give them all the same initial. You're just sending them, and you just keep sending them. You send them at the same. You just keep firing the gun from the source. Bang, 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 and you have 500 million guns, and they all shoot bang, bang at the same time. And you're just saying where do the bullets end up at the target with the same order, the same amount of time between the arrival of the bullets. I think these other diagrams and waves and such from the mainstream are trying to simplify the whole idea. No, they're really not. They're just waving the whole idea. It's obviously not simple. And the fact is that it doesn't work, okay? So I don't want to keep having to point this out. But it doesn't work as a wave theory. The waves are in the wrong place. I mean, damn it. Why do I have to keep emphasizing a point that just is so clear? I've made it clear. I've pointed out how clear it is. This is the math that works. It's the point source math, right? I mean, it just shouldn't have to be argued. Okay, in the single slit, there's no dispute. It's absolutely a fact. This is the distance they count. This distance between the two surfaces. The wave isn't here. The wave, okay, it can't be there because that's right in the middle and that's one point source. Now, if I make two waves, I can't put them here and here because then the wave centers are here and here. That's not the distance in the math, is it? No, it isn't. So the two places I have to make these two waves is in this ludicrous position here. Now, there's no theory that explains why the wave would break here in the middle. No theory at all. It doesn't make any sense at all. Why would the wave break in the middle of the opening? The place less likely, the least likely place for the wave to be broken, it's broken in half. That makes no sense. Why would the wave initiate here when there's no way for the waves to get through the barrier to create waves here? So that can't make any sense. So that doesn't work. So the whole thing doesn't work. Okay, they invented this Huygens thing like it solves their problem. Huygens never did this problem. He never solved the double slit. And certainly Huygens doesn't solve the problem. What all Huygens does is give them an excuse to cut the wave in half in this ludicrous place. Right, as soon as I say, okay, let me subdivide this. I'll put 4 waves in here. Right, then I could just say, 4 little waves. I'll draw 4 little waves in here. It's very cute. it gives me this option to say, oh, well, these waves will do the same thing as these waves, so we'll just cancel that out, okay? And they'll keep this divider, though. It just gives them an excuse to say somehow you can divide the wave. But the bottom line is if you draw it as a wave, you have to draw it here and here. That combination of waves from these point sources, this distance, that will work mathematically. If I play that out, I'll get the right pattern size here on the screen, right? So if I yeah, I have to put it closer, but you can't see it. Yeah, maybe I'm just too close. I have to go back further or something. Well, anyway. But I'll get the right size pattern, okay, if I put the waves in this stupid, idiotic, ludicrous position. If I put it where you would logically say the only places the waves could be, okay, if I was to make two waves out of the single slit, I mean, I do have to break it in this ludicrous position. I'm just saying, if you try to cram the two waves in here, that won't work mathematically. So that's doomed. You won't get the right size. All right, so in the double slit, it's just, again, it's even clearer that no chance waves work. It doesn't work. So the math that works, okay, in the double slit, it's the math that recognizes, again, the distances of the point sources. And the really important part, which is that fact that it is the point sources that are relevant. And there's a distance here between these two and a distance here between these two. And that math works. 4 point sources. All right, so now you have to have 4 waves, 4 wave centers. And so now you're stuck putting, again, these ludicrous places for the waves to be, you know, where they go, like, why does it break in the middle of a surface? Why in the middle of the surface does a wave break in two? Why is it breaking in the middle of the opening? It makes no sense. It can't be the right answer. It's too silly. It's too stupid. And scatter just explains it. Scatter from these 4 point sources gives you all the vectors you need to create the pattern, both patterns. The fact is you have to account for the dead space in the real pattern. The real pattern is going to have a dead space in it, and you know, an envelope pattern. You can't see any of that. I still can't see it, too dark. All right, so I have to definitely work on this drawing board. Getting the light better. It ends up being too much light. I might have to have 2 light sources, I guess. Well, anyway, the right pattern is, as illustrated, you know, has 2 patterns. You know, one pattern like that, and the other pattern being these little bits. And so the outside, the big dimension, has lots of wavelengths in it. It's making the little pattern, and the small distance is making the big pattern. The end. Not complicated. But nothing interferes. All you're doing is breaking and remaking. And the only thing you're breaking is order. You're not destroying any of the energy. You're just changing the order that the energy's in. You're rearranging the bullets in space because you're making some of the bullets hit stuff that occupies them for a minute, slows them down. That's the wrong way to look at it. You know, it's not helpful. So their order gets changed, but their timing can be remade. And that's all you're saying. So it's not destruction. It's just reconstruction from breaking, not destroying. There's no destructive. Forces don't interact with forces. Shit. That's a rule they understand in their own physics, and the fact that I have to keep re-emphasizing it is, you know, all I can say is it's disappointing, I guess. All right, so there's lots of wacky comments here. Anomalies to be addressed and reconciled by Mr. Draft Physics. No, I don't have to do this. I've made it clear what my agenda is, okay? I want to defend my theory and attack their theory. You wacky loop-de-doo nutballs, okay, chasing unicorns all over the place, you're none of my business, really. I have no interest in wasting my time explaining to you why talking to rice doesn't make a fucking difference. Okay, I mean, the fact that you would fall for this silly crap means you're hopelessly stupid. You really think that some asshole sat there and talked for a month to 3 different dishes of rice and that it got moldy if he said bad words. And if you made the rice happy, it made alcohol and made made a good drink. I mean, you're just, this is so fucking stupid. I can't. You're so gullible. I just really don't understand how you. I mean, if I can I sell you some golden chalk? Anything that's gold color, you'll think it's real gold and it's worth money. I mean, you what do you fall for everything? Oh God, it's just so bad. So there's some Dr. Emoto's experiments. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. I mean, it's just such garbage. And all wrapped up in some theme like, oh, this is a lesson for us to learn about raising children, because if we're nice to our children, they'll come out nice. And if we don't say nice things, they'll come out bad. When everybody knows that's not how you build human character, frankly. Some of the greatest people in the world had lousy and rotten childhoods because they grew up fast. And they grew up right because they knew life sucked. So even that doesn't make any fucking sense. It's not true as some theme. It's not a good idea to beat kids. So I'm saying, obviously, the extreme abuse you can create a psychotic. But frankly, all this love stuff doesn't work either. If you don't hard knock your fucking kids, they're not going to be able to stand up to the world they're going to have to live in. You idiots. Anyway. Of which both bring into question mental suggestibility of matter. So I mean, this is, you're just wasting my fucking time with this fucking baby talk. I mean, I just can't believe you people can fall for the things. I mean, I like I said, I keep underestimating just how stupid people really are. I keep thinking, hey, they got logical brains, they can figure this stuff out. I mean, and you're just, I don't know how you could be walking free. How do you even drive your car properly if you think this shit? My question along those lines, does the substrate of, consciousness interact with the physical? No, you don't. There's no special anything, asshole. There's just this relationship, simple. There's energy in the universe in this form of these little soldiers, and they're going to bang into you. And some of them bang into ways that matter, and some don't bang into ways that matter. And that's all there is. But there's nothing. There's no, you don't have ESP, you don't have any magical thoughts. Your thoughts are just a mechanical process based on your exposure to the world. You have to practice playing the piano to play the piano. There's no special way you get knowledge or gain understanding or insight. This is just such crap. Obviously sounds like woo-woo new age bullshit, whatever. So why are you wasting my time with it, you fucking jackass? Oh, fuck. And then this idiot, this Boneman guy, I mean, he wants me to be understanding, and he wants me to, treat him nice, and he's just asking friendly questions. No, you're just a waste of time. All right, you're not listening. I'm making it clear. I'm defending my theory, okay? My theory simply explains the universe. 2 forces, 2 pieces of matter, 2 kinds of interactions, and that's all there is. Every single experiment can be explained using this mechanical process, and I don't need any of this other wooey shit. And I made it clear. There's no fucking, nowhere do the little force bits talk to each other and experience each other and, rub each other's little private parts or any kind of bullshit. There's just nothing. The universe is dead simple and dead stupid. Fuck. Anyway. He goes this, Mashu Emoto is interesting. Why is he interesting? He's a fraud, a fake, and a phony. I mean, he's some, I mean, what do I compare it to? Mr. Rogers with a gimmick. He's trying to make a living off of being, oh, I'm a good-hearted and I'm all for good love. And I'll lie to you, okay? And the lie is that he did this experiment. They're not showing any clinical experiment. They're not showing us any proof of any of this crap ever happening. And any idiot can know it didn't happen. I mean, any idiot can know. Because we know that these kinds of experiments have been going on for decades. People have attempted to find out what, Ken Wheeler grows seeds under magnetism and stuff. He doesn't do them in a clinical way. But the point is, people are trying to find gimmicks like this all over the place. If any of this stuff was actually true, somebody would already take advantage of it. They'd make you a better breakfast cereal by talking to the corn stalks. Telling them how nice they are and how great they are, and they want to make a better cornflake. Yeah, people just like, again, this is just so bad. Flash freezing and analyzing lattice geometry is quite similar to whatever the symmetrics and the formation of grids or clumps. I mean, you're just so lost in your own bullshit. And then he replies to himself, which is so fucking annoying. What I wonder most about is the reflective nature of light traveling. So that doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't reflect off anything. Refractive? Oh, okay. And the alleged tendency to enter impediments by slowing down. So again, you haven't paid any attention. You haven't researched any of this. No physicist is telling you it slows down. All right, they say it's going through interactions while it's in the medium, okay? But the force itself doesn't necessarily slow down and then speed up. All right, it's just that the medium is consuming some time. All right, and that nothing speeds back up again. I mean, that's just horse shit. That seems to take place as a rate versus, well, anyway, it has nothing to do with what I've argued clearly, and I've clearly made the point that none of that crap happens. You want to slow something down, change its path. Force it to move more distance. So all you have to do is have the force go in, and then it interacts, and it has to go lots of different places to get where it's going. There, you've slowed it down. It's moving the same speed, but you've slowed it down in terms of its progress. And if I want to slow down a runner, I can just put more weight on his back, and that slows him down. Now, he didn't really slow down in terms of how much energy he's using or how much work he's doing. He didn't do any of that. And as soon as I lift the weight off of him, he goes back to his normal speed. So he doesn't have to speed up. He's already running. He's already working the same, and all he does is now his work is easier because you took the burden off of him. I mean, there's simple ways to understand the slowing down bullshit. Let's see. I hope that you can bear with. So he's got this whole crap about how I should bear with him, but he doesn't say anything that matters in here. In other words, I'm looking forward to your answering of questions as you are quite consistent in responding to your audience. Well, what should be consistent is I'm sick of responding to absolute crap that has nothing to do with how rotten conventional physics is and how great my physics is. That's all I'm really interested in. I'm not interested in your third world, fourth dimensional wacky verse bullshit. So if you're going to interject some kind of idiotic notions, I'm really not interested. But I appreciate you reading blah blah blah. Yeah, well, there's nothing to read, okay? You're obsessed with sound apparently, and obsessed with some sort of vibrational resonance, blah 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 blah. And there is no such thing. You either add energy to a system or you take energy away. That's all resonance is, right? A pendulum is swinging, right? Now, if I want to add energy to the pendulum, that is, I want it to swing bigger and more, I obviously have to push it when the pendulum's moving in the same direction, so I can add energy. So when the pendulum's going this way, I can add energy to the system, and now the pendulum system has more energy in it. Now, if I add the energy when the pendulum's going the opposite way, well, then I'm taking energy out of the system, and the system, that is the pendulum, will now have less energy in it. And that's all resonance is based on, is whether something is adding energy or whether it's subtracting energy. That's it. It's not any more complicated than that. But the fundamental system doesn't have any of those rules built into it. That has to emerge out of complex arrangements between atoms, electrons and protons. And it's only when you have a complex arrangement that you have to worry about the fact that the arrangement has 6 items in it. The 6 items can only react in a certain amount of time, and so energy coming in, can only be additive if it goes in after the cycle of the 6 things have been interacted with, and blah blah blah. So you have to churn everything into some timed equation before it's relevant. But for the individual forces, there's no resonance. For the matter by itself, there's no resonance. Resonance is an emergent phenomenon. You need a complex system before it's relevant. Shit. Let's see. Wash your fucking hands. Okay, that's not the same subject at all. Whatever. Yeah, I say some things in the video that, really shouldn't even be worth an argument. So, I guess there's some people who want to argue about whether there's any real problem with the fact that, I've found, in my experience with medical professionals, that they're pretty clueless about germs. And it seems like it's something they really should be the first thing they're taught, is these things are all over the place, and they are so capable of just jumping in, and being transferred. This is the biggest part of medicine, is communicable dangerous little bits. And so this is like the number one priority, is stop the microbes. But anyway, and it appears they don't teach that much. What about music theory and stepwise wave cancellation in harmonizing singers? So again, why do I have to explain this to you? I'm not telling you that water waves don't work. I'm not telling you that sound waves don't work. I'm telling you light isn't one of those things, okay? It's not a medium. The fundamental universe isn't made out of atmosphere, and it's not made out of fucking water. That's what I'm overtly saying to you. I don't have to account for it because there's no evidence that light is harmonic or any of that other horse shit. So why do I have to explain anything? The way mediums function is the way they function. It's not that hard to figure out. I've already explained it, frankly, too. There's 2 ways energy can be transferred, frickin' morons. Efficiently or inefficiently. Can you understand that? Oh, yeah, that's it. So efficient would be called, you want to get from point A. Oh, shit, I gotta put the board on. All right, you want to get from point A to point B. That's what we call efficient. It's just saying, do it efficiently, get there fast. Well, obviously, you can get there with a dead straight line, and you got there, right? But in the medium, the situation is that the medium provides all these other options, okay? Because it has a bunch of stuff that's connected to each other. So you go in, with your point A energy, and because it's not fast enough energy, it doesn't go, here to here to here to here. Well, instead, okay, it pushes a little bit on this one, it pushes a little bit on that one, it spreads the energy. So the energy ends up going in all kinds of directions. All right, so it doesn't get anywhere. So that's what mediums provide the opportunity for. If you move slowly, the medium, then the energy goes in all kinds of directions. But if you move something quickly, it'll go bang, 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 right through the middle. Okay, and it's sort of like voltage, you could argue. The higher the voltage, the faster the electricity gets, from point A to point B, in the sense that it's using fewer parts to get there. And say the lower the voltage, the more likely it is you're taking one of these funkier paths. It's sort of an analogy. It might not be an explicitly perfect analogy, but the point is that that's all mediums create. Well, there is no mediums, okay? The elemental universe doesn't do any of those transfers. As I pointed out, forces do not ever hit other forces. And if they do, it just couldn't fucking matter, okay? Because it's just this scenario. Thing comes in, another thing comes in, they hit each other. Well, if they hit each other, they just bounce off and go this way and this way. Well, if they miss each other, they go this way and this way. And if they go right through each other, they go this way and this. The universe doesn't change, idiot. Nothing changes. Okay? So if they just exchange identities, costumes, then it doesn't make any difference, right? If a pumpkin walks into a mouse and the pumpkin puts on the mouse skin and the mouse puts on the pumpkin skin, you won't be able to tell that anything changed. Whatever. There's no medium, there's no ether, there's no goop, there's no jello. The elemental universe is just made out of a bunch of force, energy moving in dead straight lines. And when matter's in there, it ricochets, and then things get interesting. But it's still just straight lines. All the forces always communicate on the elemental universe with a straight line. I'm too frustrated and irritated to just deal with you people in any kind of civil way. Let's see, you're talking about phase, noise cancellation, and have two matching frequencies. Okay, so again, it's a simple kind of concept of noise cancellation, and sound does affect sound. Force doesn't affect force. So again, they're not the same thing. There's no waves in the elemental universe. There is no fucking ether. You don't need any of it to explain the experiments. All right. Yeah, that's probably enough. I'm really just not in the mood to deal with this crap. So there's no counter arguments to anything. No one's provided the counter evidence. Again, no one's provided a link to the two-slit experiment analyzed correctly. Nobody has provided any evidence for any of the stuff they insist to exist. The idea that light plus light equals no light. None. There's no. It's done. And so we're just waiting for enough people to recognize that, yeah, frankly, we don't need wave theory. Frankly, there wasn't any nail in the coffin evidence, just like there isn't any evidence for light bending twice as much. So yeah, maybe I'll play a relativity video next. Because, it's all crap. All of physics is crap. They haven't got one thing right. They really don't have any of it right. Yeah. They can't even use words like, decay properly, in the sense that atoms decay. Muons don't decay in any way or form or shape that has anything to do with the same thing as atomic decay. And yes, they talk about how particles decay. They don't decay. Okay? They lose velocity. Big difference. All right, anyway. So, go through that. I've already gone through all this shit. Have to go over and over and over again. It's just unproductive. So I just have to make more elemental videos, and then I just point to those and just say, look, here's, I don't even, yeah, well, see, I guess that's part of the problem, is physics has got so much wrong that you have to understand that every premise of physics is wrong. Even the way they think energy works. Like I say, gravity is so obvious when you understand that, if the force has to push matter, that means it's not going to be as active as it was when it wasn't pushing matter. So obviously that would be a deficit in the force, because when it's pushing matter, it's not going as fast as it was going when it wasn't pushing matter. So obviously that would create a deficit every time there's a piece of matter somewhere moving, that it's consuming a little bit of energy out of the universe. Yeah, duh. Simple. Done. Finished. That explains it. Electrons and protons move. To move, they have to absorb a little bit of energy. Therefore, wherever electrons and protons are, there's going to be an energy deficit. More will go in than will come out. Duh. Alright. So it's enough. Sorry. Just too sick of this shit. You people really shouldn't be this stupid. I really shouldn't have to go over and over this. I mean, it should already be okay, yeah. You're right. Now, we should get some physicists to do all the math and to figure out the rest of it, but I mean, it's all fixed, you know. That's obviously the right answer. It's a simple explanation for the phenomenon. Why are we bothering with this mushy, complex, weird, wooey, silly explanation when the simple one answers the question?